Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. Zoe and I have been feeling a little bit sad because today was supposed to be the big day for us, the second annual Swansea City Centre Conference, which was all set to take place at the National Waterfront Museum today. And we had such great momentum and such a fantastic lineup of speakers and the support of all our sponsors and exhibitors and a huge team of volunteers to help us on the day. So we were feeling a little emotional last night about how much the world has changed since really just a few short weeks ago. And this new reality that we all find ourselves in of working from home and trying to keep things going in very strange and unprecedented circumstances. But we're delighted to be able to bring you a conversation today with three of our sponsors. So we've got three people with us today who represent the organisations that had come on board to sponsor key zones within the City Centre conference and exhibition. And that's, I can make some introductions now. That's Professor Ian Walsh from University of Wales, Trinity St David. Hi, Ian.
Morning, afternoon.
Afternoon. And we've got Gareth Davies, who's Director of Development, and I think you've had a new job title at Coastal Housing. Hi, Gareth.
Hello there, good afternoon.
And we've also got Andrew Douglas, who is from Swansea Business Improvement District, Swansea BID. Hi, Dougie, how are you?
Good. Oh, hang on, do it with our hands so you can see me on camera. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, we'll get used to this. So we're all, and of course, my colleague Zoe For the Region. And Zoe's not actually in our new office in the train station, but it looks like she is, thanks to the power of Zoom virtual background. So well done, Zoe. So really everything has changed and everybody's got lots of other things on their minds at the moment. And the conversations that we were going to be having today about all the major projects that are happening in the city centre and the fantastic independent change makers that are pushing forward with such fantastic things. I expect we're all feeling a bit out of context and disorientated, and what's probably needed now is a sort of different sort of conversation. So we wanted to bring together just a few of the people who make change happen in Swansea City Centre on a daily, weekly, year in, year out basis, and talk really generally about what's happening in each of your worlds at the moment and what the impacts have been so far. Obviously you're all now working from home, but it'd be interesting to share some of your stories and perspectives of what's going on in each of your organisations and your communities at the moment. And then hopefully have a conversation about what all this means for the future of Swansea City Centre, to the extent that we can see that. I mean, it's difficult to look too far ahead at the moment for any of us, but what are the positive changes that we're hoping to come out of all this awful situation that's going on at the moment with the coronavirus health crisis across the country. So I'm going to start with you, Gareth. Gareth from Coastal Housing. Thanks so much for hopping on. I know you've got a lot going on at the moment. How are things? What's happening at Coastal, and what's going on with you?
Well, I guess for me personally, both my job involves, there's two strands to it. You know, one is being part of the senior management team, the exec team at Coastal, to board, and ensuring that you know, there's business continuity is considered, and that primarily obviously involves making sure that services to coastal residents is maintained as much as it can be, given that we've obviously got a duty to our staff to make sure that they're protected, they're safe and well, given all the various guidance that's been issued by the UK government and obviously Welsh government as well. So the last week or two has been spent having daily Zoom meetings with directors, following various meetings with colleagues across the organisation to understand exactly how we can efficiently and safely deploy our frontline teams in the right way. Mobilisation and working from home has happened quite quickly. That's, I guess, a big surprise for everybody, really, in terms of, you know, how we've reacted to that, and we've got a great IT team that has helped to support that. So a lot of the phone calls that we get in from tenants are still being fielded by the call centres and the schedulers who issue the work to the operatives. Those are still being handled, but clearly at the front line we can only do so much in terms of maintenance, repairs, and dealing with tenants' inquiries from a housing perspective day to day. We've had to cut back a little bit in terms of the maintenance service. Obviously, there's urgent items. We're on call to make sure that, you know, if in the event of flooding or hot water and heating and the like, we have our teams ready to respond to that, and our teams have all been fantastic in that regard. You know, they've obviously got their own anxieties and their own concerns, but we've been able to sort of, I guess, dilute the service to a degree, but obviously focus on the pressing and urgent items. Also, we've had to sort of, I guess, explore the wider impact on our business. You know, we rely on rental income, obviously primarily from the residential stock, but also from our stock. And we've had to field calls around rental issues, but we've also had to field calls from our commercial tenants as well, in terms of, you know, how they're going to fare in the coming months. Clearly, there's been a lot of from the Chancellor to support businesses, and there's been a big announcement from Welsh Government yesterday to add to that support as well. So we're guiding our commercial tenants to those areas where they can find support on business rate relief, on grants, on things like that. But clearly, as a landlord, we charge a commercial rent, and we're being approached by various tenants in terms of, you know, rent-free periods or rent deferrals. And clearly, you know, we've got tenants who are in that world of restaurants, cafes, and the like, who have had to just close down, and clearly that really damages their revenue stream. So we're getting lots of approaches from a wide range of stakeholders to see what we can do to support, and where we can, we are you know, trying our best to do that. But clearly, the main signposting is towards the wider UK government initiatives that have been announced by the Chancellor. Finally, from my perspective, I'm director of a development team, so a lot of our sites are closing or have closed, but we are at the thick end of the financial year end, and this is a crazy time for us anyway, trying to get new projects over the line, and we've got to hit various milestones to pull down significant amounts of Welsh Government grant. So I've got a team of people who are working very, very hard, having to adapt, having to, you know, change the way they work, having to still try and deal with the various bureaucracy that's still out there, even under these pressing circumstances, and to try and get key projects over the line. And we're getting somewhere with those, I have to say. So that's been good.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's the work hasn't stopped in that sense, has it? The deadlines in terms of grant applications and all of that's going to have a massive knock-on effect. So it's trying to keep the balls in the air, I think, Gareth, isn't it?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? It's you know, it's having an eye on the service delivery. We're a housing association. We're here to serve our residents, but at the same time, we've got 250 plus people who work directly for us, and also contractors as well. So there's a wider sort of issue around ensuring that they are safeguarded, they are protected, and when they do go into the communities to deal with urgent repairs, you know, gas heating issues or water issues or whatever, the necessary precautions are taken to protect not only them but the communities that they're entering into. And,
you know, from Coastal's point of view, presumably many of your tenants fall into what are considered sort of vulnerable groups. I mean, do you have facilities for older people and special care facilities as well? What are the impacts on people? And is Coastal able to play a role in making sure those more vulnerable people are getting help and support?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we do have a couple of what we refer to as extra care schemes. One of those is in Neath and one of those is on Aberavon Seafront. So, you know, clearly the residents that live within those particular schemes are, you know, I guess classified as vulnerable, and so we have to make sure that we've got the right systems in place to address any of their concerns. Clearly, they as individuals will perhaps receive support packages from external agencies, so we have to make sure that, you know, the relevant medical people can access those schemes as and when they need to. So we try to offer support, you know, from indirectly in that regard. But you know, we do have 6,000 homes nearly, and a range of tenants. You know, families, single people, older people, younger people. So I guess it's just being there, you know, offering that frontline service as much as we are able, but clearly having a sharp eye on the protection measures that we've had to implement as a result of the government guidance on this issue.
Yeah. No, well, thanks, Gareth. Dougie, I'd love to bring you in now if you're still there. Yeah, there you are.
I'm here.
Great. And in terms of the impacts on Swansea city centre itself, obviously BID has a huge role to play in supporting and championing Swansea city centre. And I know it's been a few stages, and I think just recently this week the decision's been taken to close the market, but I know that the market was still open and various traders were still going. I mean, what's been the experience? How are traders coping? How's the city centre been over the last few weeks?
Well, it's still there. Is the major message that we need to get out there. I've been talking to the Rangers. The Ranger service is still out there. They're still patrolling. We're providing them with updated lists every day and working back and forth with them so that we know who is open and who isn't. So that we can then let the police know for security reasons and all of this side of things. We're down to approximately, at the last count, I think we've got about 5 shops in the city centre that are still actively trading. On pound and pound stretches, some of the nationals, the Tesco's and the Sainsbury's of the world are still going. A lot of the independents have closed their doors. The market, however, although the doors are closed, the market traders, the food-based ones, are still trading. They are still running some phenomenally successful delivery schemes. I was chatting to one of them the other day, who was still out delivering food at 11:30 on a Monday night. So you know, they're still going. Those services are still there. From a BID perspective, our job at the moment is basically advice and guidance. If anybody is looking at this and not sure what to do in regards to rate relief or into regards to how to furlough staff, furlough was a word that nobody had ever heard of 2 weeks ago, but now it's on the top of everybody's conversation. All of that sort of information, we are working very, very hard in the background to keeping those updates as live as possible on the Swansea BID website. So if you head across to the Swansea BID website, swansea-bid.co.uk, go to the documentation section. Madeline, our sort of IT and PDF creator, is working their fingers to the bone, keeping all of these things up to date and on top. All the information you need is there. We've done deals with Peter Lynn and Partners. We've extended out their legal coverage that they provide to BID members, so that if anybody's got any legal issues or HR issues or anything like that, head to Peter Lynn and Partners. They're a BID partner, a BID member, and then they can help you out with that. So we're doing a lot in the background, trying to keep the information flowing to the businesses. We're still here on the phone. I may be in the house, but the phone line from the BID office diverts to me. Any queries, anybody can come to us, and we will do our best to answer the query. If I can't answer it there and then, I'll get back to you. It's the general way of things. Things are changing so quickly that sometimes we put stuff out on the morning on the website, but the afternoon it's changed. So poor old Mads is running around like a lunatic trying to keep it all up. But that's our prime role at the moment, is supporting everybody, making sure they've got all the information they need so they can stay in touch with, like the Welsh Assembly grants that were announced yesterday. Information on that went up on the website this morning. But there's also a lot of planning going on in the background of when all this blows over and everything is restricted and unrestricted, and we can get back to normal. Then it's literally a case of us pressing a button and we relaunch Swansea with a bang. The big thing that I've learned out of this, which is I find quite what's the word I'm looking for? Quite proud of, is the speed that everyone reacted to things. The market got their delivery system up and running in next to no time. Gower Butcher got their delivery system up and running in next to no time. We launched the shopappy.com app to try and get delivery systems up and running. By the time we got that up and running, other people had already done it. So the city centres reacted, the traders have reacted fantastically well. And I'm hoping that when all this blows over, that continues. People will get used to having their milk dropped off at the front door and a guy knocking on their door, hopefully not at 11:30, but a guy they're dropping off their meat and their veg. And I'm hoping that when we go back to normal, all of those activities continue.
Yeah, I've been reflecting on that as well, Dougie, that we're, those of us who are seeking out some of the local suppliers to make deliveries of food, those are relationships that hopefully we can sustain after all this is over. And that's a whole new revenue stream for a lot of those businesses that previously relied solely on footfall, out of necessity and being forced to create an online offer and create delivery options. There's the hope, isn't there, that we can continue those new relationships after this is all over. But of course, we will want people to come back into the city centre as well.
Of course,
all those, all
I'm
those
hearing
businesses.
stories of one butcher that I know has in the last fortnight has turned over what he would normally turn over in 2 months.
Wow.
So for some businesses, although it's a lot of hard work for people, for some businesses it's working very well. I think that when everything it goes back to normal, there's going to be a bit of a resurgence for the high street. People have been used to going to the local supplier. Not dissing the Sainsbury's and Tesco's and the big supermarkets of this world, because they're doing a fantastic job at the moment. But people are getting used to all of this, and I think we're going to see more footfall into the city centre, with people coming in to get their shopping, to have a cup of coffee, to make the food shop a bit more of a day out, a bit more a European model, I suppose, is probably the way to look at it.
Yeah, we're realising what we're missing, aren't we, now that we're all stuck at home? We want nothing better than just to scroll around a place with lots of people. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Dougie. We'll come back and explore some of those themes in a bit. I wanted to turn to Ian now, and Ian Walsh, you'll be able to give us a good perspective on what's happening at the University of Wales Trinity St David, what's happening with all the students, what the impacts have been for your staff and as an organisation as a whole. But obviously students have had their studies suddenly massively disrupted, and I know there's a lot of concern about exams and how that will work, particularly for final year students, but it must just be across the board, Ian.
Well, first of all, can I start by just saying how proud I am of staff and students from across the university. We have 3 main campuses in South Wales, from Lampeter, Carmarthen and Swansea. We also have a footprint in Cardiff, and we have, it's not well known, but we have 2 learning centres in London and Birmingham, which have almost as many students as we have in South Wales. So what's remarkable is that from the decision to suspend face-to-face teaching, I think it was taken on a Sunday, by the Wednesday, we'd moved pretty much everything over onto online delivery, which has been just a phenomenal exercise. Talk about stress testing your IT network. It's probably been the most fundamental test of the internet and of our ability to work digitally that we've ever seen. It's probably the first time the internet is truly being used for what it was originally intended for, which was this kind of way of maintaining communication in the event of a major catastrophe. And we're seeing that come to the fore. So it's appropriate, actually. We're very proud to have sponsored, had it gone ahead, the kind of the digital and the creative zone. And we've had to be very creative in the way we deliver digital learning environment to our students. So the first thing was a massive transition from taking staff from a very traditional form of teaching on to an online delivery platform. Now, it hasn't been without its challenges. We have a very big art college. In fact, we have 2 art colleges within the university, one in Carmarthen and obviously in Swansea. You can't teach a lot of what we teach in art and design online. So there've had to be some adjustments into the type of work we're asking our students to do and the way in which they present that work. So we had to set up special support networks to allow students to communicate with each other and with staff more effectively. Some things we may have to return to. We're thinking about how students could possibly come back and use our facilities in the future to complete the more practical elements of their programs, which we're having to work around during this time of working digitally. But generally, the student experience, we have a morning meeting. There's several morning meetings every day starting at 8:30 with different groups of people. I have a meeting with the head of the Students' Union, head of Student Services every morning, just to make sure that student experience is a happy one and they're being supported well. And we get some really positive feedback. There are challenges facing universities nationally in terms of what do we do with accommodation, etc., when students are not using that accommodation in term 3. So we're working through these challenges in company with other universities. We have taken early action to take care of those things which perhaps people don't think of, such as those at the bedrock of an organisation, such as payroll, for example, making sure that we can pay our staff on time, finance to make sure we can pay our invoices on time, so we don't affect some of our suppliers. So all these things have been done in the background to make sure that as an organisation we're still open for business. We might be online, but we're actually open for business. We've had to support international students, for example, some of whom have had to be repatriated because of lockdown situations in their home countries and being called home. So we've had to support those, but we've also got a lot of students still resident on campus, particularly in Carmarthen and Lampeter, that we're caring for and supporting through the excellent work of cleaners, student services, catering staff who are still supporting those students. So it's been a phenomenal team effort. Some of the things that we've been doing as well in support of the NHS. We've got 3 or 4 live projects at the moment, working on different projects in support of urgent calls from the government and from the NHS. So working on face masks for patients, as well as PPE for staff. We're working on ventilators, and we're contributing in a whole range of ways, directly as a university and also with partners across Wales. And of course, then there's the matter of the day job. We want to be open when this thing is over, so we're recruiting heavily for next year. So we're carrying on our normal procedures. It's been interesting for staff doing online interviews instead of normal face-to-face interviews. But that again throws up opportunities. So we're probably doing in many ways more interviews because students now who perhaps would have looked twice at us before because of the distance to travel for interview, will now do an online interview. And so we may end up with a much more diverse group of students next year.
That's interesting. Yeah, it opens us all up and makes location less significant, doesn't it, for all these things? And I just noted what you were saying about it with such a large organisation and a body of students still to support. You mentioned some of those key workers that perhaps we haven't previously recognised as key workers, but in this sort of situation, all those people who are cleaning buildings, catering, delivery staff, and all of those workers that we depend on in this situation. And very difficult, isn't it, to balance the taking care of those staff with the needs that are still ongoing. But I think, as you've described, really, it's a matter of keeping everything going, and the day job continues despite this massive disruption.
I mean, it's the thing for all organisations, isn't it? We have to make sure the wheels don't come off whilst we're going through these extraordinary times. And so it's making sure that regular health and safety maintenance, checking our systems to make sure they're safe and compliant, so that we don't undermine our ability to ramp up again once this crisis is over. So a lot of our work in the short term was the immediacy of supporting our students to make sure they can be well looked after, get them online. Even things like having to redraft huge tranches of our regulations to accommodate new ways of delivery and new ways of assessment so that students don't lose out. So we've worked, there's a list of names as long as my arm of the people who've worked literally 24/7 to make sure that the students' studies are disrupted to the minimum possible extent. And I think when this is written up in the future, there's a lot of people will deserve a pat on the back for the work they've done.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. That's interesting. So in the big student accommodation blocks in the city centre, are they largely still occupied? Have most students gone home?
Right, then it's a difficult answer because they're all privately owned. So we only have a limited footprint in the city centre now in Llysglas, and we have a handful of students remaining at Llysglas. But what we have been doing is communicating regularly with organisations such as Student Roost and Liberty and other, both in Swansea and in Cardiff. I have to say they've been, as far as the feedback I've had, they've been excellent in terms of supporting students, catering for those students who've been self-isolating in the early stages. They've been first class, and I think again, when we look back upon this, we'll be able to see that people have really stepped up to the plate and in many cases laid aside immediate commercial interests in order to support students going through really anxious times.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that theme of people stepping up, I think we can all reflect on how amazing the fabric of our society, which, some of us thought some of that had been lost, that actually people caring about each other and stepping up to help in such massive ways. I think that's been really visible across all our communities, hasn't it? And, are there stories, Gareth, for example, at Coastal, and Dougie, you've spoken about the way that the traders have responded, but have you got particular things that what fills you with the most hope and the most sort of faith in humanity out of all of this? It's been such a massive wave of people trying to help and trying to work in different ways. What do you think, Gareth?
I think it probably just expands on a little bit of what Ian has said. It's astonishing how ready people are to sort of react to an absolutely unprecedented situation. None of us have experienced this in our lifetimes at all. I don't think. And to see see the staff sort of mobilise where they can at a moment's notice into different environments and just deal with the job in hand, and always have the resident as their priority focus is hugely sort of uplifting. And I commend all of Coastal's frontline staff for the commitment that they've shown throughout this very, very difficult period. Again, given that they've got their own anxieties around what's going on as well, but they're sort of their determination to continue to deliver is quite remarkable, really. And then, like Ian said, but behind the scenes as well, there's cogs in every organisation that make a business function. And sort of I smiled wryly there with the whole thing. But being paid under such difficult times is important. And of course, we're trying our best as well to ensure that the supply chains that we deal with are sort of supported. Very, very difficult, but absolutely that sense of purpose and that sense of overall society and community has been really, really quite remarkable to witness.
Yeah, I think I noticed that the council had made a point of saying that they were paying all of their suppliers immediately, marking all their outstanding invoices for immediate payment. And certainly as a small supplier to large organizations, myself in running a small business, that's so appreciated. I mean, that's a role that large organizations can play, and from what I've seen have been taking that seriously, because it's the smaller organizations that are questioning their survival, and we all need to support each other, particularly across our region, in supporting supply chains as much as we can. Everything has a knock-on effect, doesn't it? And you realize how interconnected all those relationships are.
Definitely.
Yeah, Dougie, you mentioned some of how impressed you were about the way that traders were responding. And what do you think people are feeling in your community and in the city centre? You know, do you think do you think love is winning through? Do you think there's that community spirit coming back, or do you think we've got difficult times in terms of we're all locked in our houses, and are we losing some of that connection with our local communities?
Yes and no is probably the answer to that. Yes, you're using that social interaction side of things. I know I personally, as my wife refers to me, the social butterfly, is very much missing that intimate personal contact. However, if you're looking at some of the social media things, there's one group on Facebook, the Swansea Coronavirus Support Group, and I put a question in there yesterday asking for a little bit of advice or something, and had 7 responses within 30 seconds. And that sort of response, that online response from the community is growing and growing and growing. And that group, I have to admit, is particularly impressive about how helpful people can be, and what people are willing to do. In regards to some of the traders, the speed that some of the traders reacted to the situation, essentially to keep themselves in business, has been phenomenal. The number of restaurants and cafes in the town centre who, within 2 hours of the announcement coming out, the restaurants and cafes were due to close, were all over social media saying, well, okay, we'll do takeaway. And you can now get, and I was like, that, oh, blimey. And then somebody was trying to coordinate all of that side of things. We've got, we'll have a spreadsheet coming out on social media via the Big Heart app within the next couple of days of all of these different people who were providing these services. I just couldn't keep up. Every now and again, you just finish typing one in, and another one will pop up on social media saying, "We're doing it, we're doing it, we're doing it." So, it's from that side of things, from the people, the local community connecting to local businesses, has been phenomenal. But also in regards to the national businesses, now I was shopping in, went and did my food shop in Iceland, just down the road from my house the other day, and whilst I was in the queue, 6 people thanked the checkout staff just for being there, and I think that side of things, the appreciation of those people being in work, is growing that community side of things as well. So yeah, so it's a yes and no answer. Yes, we're missing the social thing. I really miss the pub, but from the business side of things, I think it's just changing the way the business works, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, I think that role that you've described of collating lists of all the city centre businesses that are still trading one way or another, people are really interested to receive that information and hopefully, keep those businesses afloat by spending our money with local independent companies where we can during this time. So yeah, please do share that list with us once it's live. And
well, it should be going out onto the Big Heart social media feeds as of tomorrow, I believe, or maybe later in the week. We've got so much information coming out of the bid and the Big Heart at the moment that trying to collate it all so we're not overloading with people with information on social media is a bit of a tricky one. The other one that I think that people should look out for, we've recently launched something called the True Heart of Swansea. Now, what we do with True Heart is that we actually go and talk to, when we could, we're now doing it online where we can, but we go and talk to local traders and provide their stories. So we make those businesses more personal to people. So if I head across onto Instagram, True Art of Swansea is on Instagram. We've got some fantastic photos, some fantastic stories of people on there as well. So have a look at all of that side of things as well. It's you know, it's about personalizing business.
Yeah, I've caught a couple of those, Dougie, and I think it's so important, isn't it, to recognise the people and the struggle in some ways that goes on behind the scenes of any business, and the journey that those entrepreneurs have gone on to get to that point. And when you start to make something personal and human, you realise why it's so important that we all support those local traders, those local entrepreneurs and local businesses, because they're real people and real families, aren't they? And it's great to sort of
definitely
shine a light on some of those stories. That's fantastic. And you know, looking forward, we've probably covered some of this in the comments that we've been making already, but what do you think, what do you see happening now? This is sort of a question for all of you, but perhaps I'll come to Ian Walsh first. What do you see emerging now that we can take as a positive from this awful experience? Because as much as we want to focus on opportunities, we know that for a lot of people this is going to be a very frightening and sad time, and it's always, I think, helpful to try and find what's the meaning of all of this in the medium and long term. What meaning can we make out of it, and how can we turn it into a positive?
Yeah, I think some of the comments that have already been made in terms of, we seem to have discovered a new appreciation for people and for those in the community who are there to support and to help. And I think it'd be a shame if at the back end of this, we return to our normal kind of standoffish, indifferent selves. We need to, I think, cherish some of the new community spirit which has come out of this virus. We've, in our daily Zoom and team meetings online with colleagues, I mean, people are saying we're speaking to each other far more now than we would normally do, but actually the meetings are shorter, more focused, punchier. People are making decisions more quickly. So there's a lot of bonuses out of the situation in terms of how we engage with people. But I think as well, looking long term, I think there's things that we can learn from this process, which things have worked and which things have added value to our society. But also, I think it'll give us a new appreciation for the things that we're missing at the moment, such as that physical, social interaction. I'm hoping at the back end of this, we'll actually have a new appreciation for the importance of meeting together physically in space, in the city centre, or wherever we are in the communities around the city, around the region. And I also think there'll be a lot of entrepreneurial ideas coming out of this in terms of businesses responding maybe in the short term in a very kind of rapid way to the online world, but will realize the value of that and take a lot more of their business online, or see that as complementary to their traditional business. So I think a lot of traders, the companies I talk to, have almost sort of assumed the internet was for the big players, for the big companies, for the international companies, and have now realized actually it's for them as well. And having a more robust approach to how we engage with online shopping, how we engage with online delivery services, is going to fundamentally change the way our city centre develops. And I think we need to take stock upon that. We don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater on this and assume that the physical is lost and now we're all digital. I think we'll have a new appreciation for physical interaction, but also new awareness of the power of online engagement. I think as well as at a national level, but also at a regional and local level, it's about engaging with local suppliers, local providers, local businesses to make sure that we actually care and build up resilience in our local supply chains. What we've discovered with this is that suddenly, whilst it's okay to have things flown in from the four corners of the world in normal times, what happens when that goes wrong? And actually maybe we should do less of that anyway, both for our carbon footprint, but also for the well-being of our of our regional producers. So, you know, we have some of the best produce in the world on our doorstep, and yet we continue to fly stuff in from all over the world. So how can we build up resilience in our region, in our country? So actually, yeah, we are more eating local, buying local, and maybe living local. Having said all that, we're still in contact with something like 14 European partners on collaborative work and project work. So we don't want to give up on that, but it's about balancing our internationalization, both in education and commerce and what have you, with the importance of celebrating our own place, our own patch, and how we can make that thrive.
I couldn't agree more. That's really interesting, Ian, about that balance that we need to strike, isn't it, between building up resilience locally, but also the importance of those international relationships as well. There's something weird going on, isn't it, when the whole world is facing the same challenge at the same time, really urgently. And so in some ways it's connecting us with the human experience of people all over the world, at the same time as it is shining a light on how important it is to have resilience locally and regionally, and that's sort of taken on a whole new priority, I think, in the light of this, hasn't it? And Gareth, what do you think in terms of lessons to learn, or perhaps new priorities that are emerging, and what positive change can we make of this terrible situation?
Do you know, I think, to be honest, some of the stuff that we've spoken about, localism, you know, regionalism, is stuff that we were working on anyway. You know, we'll hopefully continue to have projects where we're trying to promote local suppliers, you know, whatever they wish to sort of get involved with, and using our commercial space to allow that to happen. So I guess from a positive point of view, those types of projects may be realised quicker. Obviously, it just depends on how the economy sort of shapes up as we emerge from this. I think that's going to be the interesting aspect. But I think, you know, certainly some of the stuff that we've been looking at will be helped, I think, by what's going on. Trying to sort of think of silver linings really from this. And I think it all, you know, the internet is clearly a powerful thing, and online, you know, digital connections are clearly essential at the moment. And I can only speak for myself. I don't mind it, but I prefer being in a room with people. But I think there's got to be a balance now going forward. So certainly, I think there's been evidence out there already in the last 2 or 3 weeks that, you know, Mother Nature is thanking us or thanking the situation for what's happening, because there's evidence to suggest that, you know, this is having a positive impact on the planet overall. It's whether we can sort of accept that as a lesson to go forward with. And I think we just need to maybe sort of be smarter in the way that we conduct our meetings. So do I, for example, travel to Cardiff from Swansea for an hour's meeting when I know that this type of facility is perfectly capable of dealing with that? But clearly on other occasions, you know, physical interaction with people, attending conferences and networking and all that type of stuff has to continue. You know, we thrive on that, I think, as a human race.
Yeah, Zoe and I have been having those sorts of conversations about the environment and the circular economy. Zoe, I don't know if you want to say anything on that, but where you're seeing the opportunity in all of this. Zoe?
I'm sorry, you went quiet, sorry.
Oh, I was just asking whether you wanted to come in on some of that. You know, we were having a conversation, weren't we, about the opportunities in terms of the circular economy and the environment, and where you see the opportunity. And
for us as an organisation anyway, it's been so difficult the last 2 years to spread ourselves across the 4 counties, and we're to connect with so many more people, because we can do this. And like Gareth just said, we're not sitting in the car on an hour waiting to go to meetings. This is all instant. It's all like, it's really helping us to connect the region in a much quicker, different way. So this is a funny experience for all of us. But I mean, Dawn and I have spoken before about this. You know, this might not be the first or the last of these sorts of situations. And when we've been talking about climate change and things, by this happening now, we will be able to set ourselves up for anything. We will be able to make ourselves resilient and set ourselves up for in case of anything happens again. And I mean, we champion local supply chain as much as we can. And I think everybody's touched on the fact that we need to support local suppliers as much as possible. I think when we're able to get back out into the city centre, we'll all be hitting the retail shops to get after our food deliveries. But it's a challenging but different time for us all. And I think, I mean, everybody's touched on the special bits about different people being so all coming together. But it's an opportunity for us all to think about the way we do things in a different way.
Yeah, I think so. Dougie, any final thoughts from you on you know, what you'd like to see as the positives that come out of this long term, personally, and for your organisation and for the city centre and perhaps for the world? What are we learning from all of this?
Well, that's a bit of a tricky one. I feel like the spotlight's just been put straight on top of me. Well, I'm hoping that people are getting an appreciation of what they've got around them now, that with the speed and the service that some of the local traders have put on, but also the dedication some of the nationals have shown to keep open and keep going. But you know, I know for a fact that there are several very large parties organised, ready to go, where on the day that everything is allowed to be reopened, then people will be in cafes having breakfast, then going shopping, then going to restaurants for lunch, and then going to the cinema, and then going off to the pubs in the evening, and getting it all done in one day, making up for 2 months worth of no social interaction and doing it all in a day. So, you know, I'm hoping, I'm very much hoping that on the day that restrictions are fully lifted, that the town centres and all of those businesses that have been closed are going to see a huge volume of activity coming through their doors as people rush out and, you know, and stand in the street and go, oh, this is what the street is like.
We've launched a community-based project recently for the region, with which was the idea of one of our Pembrokeshire change makers based in St David's, and it's this idea that it's called the Community Bunting Challenge, and different local groups right across the region but also beyond are setting themselves up to make brightly coloured bunting out of old clothes and recycled materials, those who are stuck at home without a full-time job and childcare to do as well. But the idea is that when all this is over, we can string together all our bunting that we've all been making separately in our own houses and bring it out to decorate local high streets right across the region, and you know, have that sort of sense of celebration and festival feel when all this is over. And but there's something quite nice about that, I think, this idea that we're all in our own houses and we're all locked away from each other, and perhaps have a bit of time to think about making some bunting. But you know, the sort of hopefulness in looking forward to being able to connect those strips of bunting up with our neighbours and come out and get back onto our high streets again. And it's those independent businesses that we all just want to see them all bounce back, don't we? And Gareth, I think you touched on we haven't talked a lot about the long-term effects on the economy, and so that's a big question mark at the moment. But there's undoubtedly tough times ahead, and I think if we can maintain this spirit of people pulling together and working together to tackle these sorts of challenges, that's our best hope really for weathering difficult times like this. I finally would just like to ask a personal question. How are you getting on with home working? I haven't seen any kids coming and interrupting any of you, or How are you managing, Gareth? Who's at home with you? Have you got a house full, or have you got some peace and quiet?
Well, this does this go? This goes out, does it, on Facebook?
It might do, yeah.
All right, okay. Well, I've got some very unusual personal circumstances going on in my life. Let's just put it.
Okay, yeah, it's a difficult time. Yeah, suddenly we're all stuck in trying to work from home, and we've got all the same chaos of life going on in the background. How about you, Dougie? Are you coping? Are you going stir crazy?
No, not yet. My son's here with me. My wife is still out working, so I get the house to myself and a stroppy teenager and a snoring dog, who's particularly comfortable in the corner at the moment. But yeah, I'm missing the social side of things. My job within the bid is essentially to talk to people and be out there knocking on the doors of all the shops and doing that, and it does make my job a little bit hard because I can't talk to anybody. So I'm missing that side of things, but work is keeping me busy. There's plenty to do around here. And you know, I'm up every morning. I've got my routine on. I don't always put the bid shirt on every morning before I sit at the computer. I've done that especially for today. But you know, I'm maintaining a routine, and I'm up every day as normal and down and logging on at the same time I normally would if I was in the office. I just haven't got the 20 minutes on the bus in the morning. I've got the rather steep stairs instead.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, how about you, Ian? You've got your virtual background. It looks like you're in the Alex building, but I bet that's a messy bedroom behind you, isn't it?
Not far off. No, I think I'm enjoying it. It's the commute is much easier, you know, with a cup of coffee from the kitchen into study area. But I think the thing is, for me, it's one is I'm enjoying actually the interaction with colleagues online, and I'm speaking to colleagues in different departments each day, which I perhaps wouldn't normally speak to because of the nature of our jobs. But I do miss that social interaction with colleagues. You know, working in a university where you're surrounded by young people, and there's such an energy. I think that's the key thing that the online world can't replicate, is the energy of being amongst people. And so I'm looking forward to getting back into that. But one thing that's been, we have a slogan in the University of Wales, St David, stay near, go far. And it's always been to try and encourage more of our local students to stay and study with us. And I think what this is proving, that you can be local, even in your own bedroom, and engage with the world. And I think that's been an interesting and a surprising joy that I can be doing Skype with colleagues in Rome, or colleagues in the north of England, or whatever it might be, and speak to them just as easily as if they're in the room next door to me, or on the chair next to me. So that's been a real joy, actually. I don't miss being stuck in traffic heading to meetings in Cardiff, that's for sure.
No, well, on the odd occasions that I have been out in the car, it's actually a pleasure to drive around the city centre at the moment. That's it would be great, wouldn't it, if we could really cut the traffic and do a lot more of our work and commuting in this way. Yeah. Gareth, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I do a bit of running, so I'm taking advantage of Mr. Johnson's, edict that we can get out and have some exercise, and it's quite nice to actually run on roads rather than pavements.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, lovely to just have less traffic on the road, and it'd be great if we can somehow reduce traffic and keep more people on bikes and more delivery services. But yeah, it's not quite the same, is it, Ian? It's not quite the same as sitting in a room with people and the energy that you get from actually being present. I've been holding team meetings with the iCreate team every day on Zoom, and it's sustainable, and we're carrying on. We're mainly a digital business, so we can keep working. But after a week or two, you're just starting to feel that it isn't quite the same. There's something missing about the energy in the room when you're all in there together. So I wouldn't like to do it forever and a day, but there's certainly parts of this new lifestyle that I think we'll all want to hang on to a bit, won't we?
Absolutely.
We've only just moved into our new office and we can't even get in there. It's such a shame.
Yeah,
we have a Facebook.
We'll have a big party there when we get out.
We have
Sorry,
something
Gareth.
called Workplace at Coastal. It's a Facebook platform for working work organisations, and it's been quite sort of enlivening to see people's posts and what they're getting up to, and suggestions for keeping children particularly busy at this time. So it's a great way to stay connected across the organisation.
Yeah, well, thank goodness the internet hasn't gone down, hey? That's we're becoming very reliant on internet connections. Another kind of virus could wipe that out altogether, couldn't it?
Oh no!
Wow.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things we have to reflect on is, you know, how secure we all felt with normality as it was, how rapidly everything changes, and you know how resilient we are actually to keep going and to find new ways forward, how creative we can be as people and communities and organizations. This is sort of showing that we do have all those amazing strengths to adapt and change in an uncertain world. So it's challenging times, but and set to get very, very difficult. I think the other thing is the emotional toll that it's going to take on all of us over the coming weeks. Shouldn't be underestimated, and I think for employers as well to have that awareness of, you know, what people are going through psychologically is going to be hard, and some sense of normality in terms of keeping up working. I feel that is really helpful, but also we also need to allow ourselves the time. There's a lot to take in, especially those of us with kids at home and all of that as well. But undoubtedly this experience will change all of us forever, won't it? And it will be up to people like us to try and think of how we make positive change come out of this situation for ourselves and also for our city and for our region. I think we all feel that sense more than ever, don't we?
Yeah, I think an important point to make is that work media is not the same as social media. And I think that in this first week or so, I think people are responding as if they would on social media. So it means that we're practically working 24/7, which is unsustainable. I think we're talking to colleagues about how to have a better online etiquette and balancing work, even down to the fact that people used to drive for an hour to get to work are now starting work when they would have been getting in the car. So you're bolting on an extra 2 hours work to the day. So I think it's about making sure that we don't impose unrealistic working expectations on staff, especially when people send you emails at 10 o'clock at night and expect a response. So we're looking at that in terms of how we can look after people's well-being. There's always some who just love doing it anyway, so you can't stop them. But so making sure that people understand that there are limitations to what we should be doing, what we can be doing, even when the office is suddenly in your living room, as opposed to being an hour down the road.
Yeah, I think that's right. We've got to be understanding of ourselves and each other, haven't we? And we've got to learn to set different boundaries and be careful about how we're spending our time and what we're doing as well. I think we're all on this huge learning journey together. I'm so grateful to all of you for taking the time to come and chat to us for the region, and it's such a shame that we aren't all together in the National Waterfront Museum, but thank you as sponsors of the Swansea City Centre Conference and Exhibition. Thanks for staying with us, and we're certainly really hopeful that the event will be bigger and better than it would have been at some future date, but it's difficult to put any timescales on that. So, but thank you for your continued support as sponsors. Swansea Bid, Coastal Housing and the University of Wales Trinity St David. We really couldn't do this without the support of your organisations. And just to pick up on a couple of things, I know, Dougie, you mentioned the support that independent businesses and traders can access, and Swansea Bid are playing a really important role in making sure that information is available and accessible to businesses. So I'd urge you all to make sure you're on Bid's website and accessing that information. And the message to traders and businesses and retailers and all the people that make Swansea City Centre so great. We're with you in spirit, and there's great solidarity, and we'll all be here when it's time to reopen the doors, and hopefully come back better and stronger and more excited about the future than we were before. But I'll draw this conversation to a close. I'd just like to remind everybody that if you believe, as Zoe and I do, passionately in the future of Swansea and the wider region, you can always join us to support our work in connecting people and sharing the good news about what's happening and enabling better collaboration across South West Wales. And of course, you can subscribe to our newsletter. We'll be putting this video out on our Facebook page, and it was a shame with typical tech trouble, we were unable to stream it live, but we'll be really interested to hear what all of you guys think and what your hopes are for the future, and how you think this has impacted plans for Swansea and how those are changing and evolving. And as I say, we're launching this bunting challenge. So if you fancy sitting at home sewing some colourful bunting out of recycled clothes and fabrics, then let us know, because there's a Facebook group especially for that. If you look up the Community Bunting Challenge on Facebook, and I can't wait for the day when we can string that bunting out on the streets of our communities and in our city centre to celebrate the ability to get back out there and support Swansea and support the independent change makers right across the city and the region. I think that's it from us, and I thank you all very much for tuning in, and in particular thanks to our guests on today's conversation. That's once again Gareth Davies from Coastal Housing Group, Professor Ian Walsh from University of Wales, Trinity St David, and the famous Dougie from Swansea Beard. Thanks all very much for joining us. And we will look forward to keeping in touch with all of you, and yeah, keep your spirits up and try and find the positives in all of this, because there are positives and there are opportunities, and we need to keep the hope and the spirit alive, and yeah, maintain that solidarity going forward. All right, thanks all very much. I'll end the meeting. Thanks. Cheers. Lovely to see you all. Cheers. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.
Stay safe. Bye.
Right.